My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Well, in our last video, we began an examination of the fact that Paul in Romans chapter 8 was anticipating the redemption of creation in both the amillennial world, the postmillennial world, and to a certain extent in the dispensational world. There is an expectation and a belief that at some future point of time, at the so-called end of time, when Jesus comes back to put an end to world history, as it is often expressed, this physical material creation is going to be recreated, renovated, be renovated by fire, and then God will start all over with a new heaven and a new earth. In my 2012 debate with Dr. Joel McDermott, he affirmed that he's looking forward to a literal, physical kingdom here on earth of a new heaven and a new earth. Harold Eberle, in my debate with him in Oregon, he affirmed the same thing. Well, here's something that is absolutely critical. The New Testament writers tell us that their expectation of the new heaven and the new earth is taken from the Old Testament prophets. In Peter's discussion of the day of the Lord and the new heaven and the new earth, he said he was looking for what the prophets had foretold. And he said that his doctrine of the new heaven and new earth was, quote, according to his, that is God's, promise of the new heaven and the new earth. Well, this study alone could take us far afield, so I'm going to limit my discussion of the new heaven and new earth to the book of Isaiah. There are other passages, but I'm going to limit it to the book of Isaiah. And then we will take a look at 2 Peter 3 and Revelation chapter 21. What we're going to discover is that the doctrine of the new heaven and the new earth, number one, obviously takes place at the end of the millennium. No one denies that. That's affirmed by the dispensationalists. It is affirmed by virtually everyone. But what they fail to see, point number one, is the covenantal nature of the new heaven and new earth. And number two, what is destroyed to bring in the new heaven and the new earth. In other words, they fail to properly identify the old creation. We're going to identify that in our study. For our first examination, I want us to look at Isaiah chapter 51. Now, in Isaiah 51, the Lord has called on Israel, look to Abraham, the rock from which you are hewn. Well, Abraham is dead many centuries. Hundreds and hundreds of years. But they are told to look to Abraham and to the promises that were made to Abraham. Oh, what was the promise made to Abraham? He longed for a city and a country and a resurrection, the better resurrection, according to Hebrews chapter 11. So here in Isaiah chapter 51, the Lord calls on Israel to look all the way back to Abraham. Now, remember that Abraham, according to Jesus, saw the Abraham saw those promises that were given to him, and he saw them, quote, far off. John chapter 8, 51 and following. Abraham saw the promises far off. They were not for his day. Isaiah is reminding his people about those promises. Now, I want you to notice something. And, look, just an examination, a thorough examination of Isaiah 51 would take us weeks. So I'm not going to do that. But I do want you to notice that after calling on Israel to look all the way back to Abraham, and thus all the way forward to the time of fulfillment, the Lord says this, listen to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation. For a law shall proceed from me, and will make my justice rest as a light to the people. My righteousness is near, my salvation has gone forth. My arms will judge the peoples, the coastlands will wait upon me, and on my arm they will trust. Now, notice that he's already called attention to the fact that he's talking about events, about promises that were given and that were far off. So the near reference here is to the time of fulfillment. When the time of fulfillment came, fulfillment would be near. But notice the nature of this. Notice what he promises. He is promising the new covenant. A law will go forth from me, and I will make justice rest as a light to the people. So when God gave the new covenant is the time of the Abrahamic promises. The time of the giving of the new covenant is the time of the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise. Wow! Let me state this very simply. If the new covenant has been given, then the Abrahamic promises have been fulfilled. But the Abrahamic promise involved heavenly city, heavenly country, resurrection. Folks, we can't divorce resurrection and the new creation from the promises made to Abraham. And here is Isaiah calling Israel, remember the promises that were given centuries beforehand. Look to the time of that, which Abraham was told was far off. And of course, remember that the writer of Hebrews said the time had arrived. They were now standing at the foot of Zion, which is the heavenly city in the heavenly country promised to Abraham. The time of fulfillment had arrived and was therefore near, just as Isaiah said it would be when the time came. So first of all, in our examination of the new heaven and the new earth, i.e., the redemption of creation of Romans 8, we must keep in mind that it is related to the Abrahamic promise. Now, we've talked about the Abrahamic covenant, the Abrahamic inheritance a lot, but I'm now looking at it in the context of Isaiah and what Isaiah promised. Isaiah put that new creation in the context of the new covenant. So let me say once again, God said in the time of the new covenant, He would fulfill His promise to Abraham. And oh, by the way, that promise involved the destruction of heaven and earth, but the continuance of the new covenant. Which means the new covenant is the means by which God would create the new creation. Well, on the new heaven and new earth, on the redemption of creation, we're going to see that Isaiah foretold the destruction of the old creation and the creation of a new creation, and he put that promise strictly, solely, and exclusively within the parameters and the framework of the giving of covenant. Powerful stuff. So we'll see you on the flip side.